If you were tasked with designing a brand new society completely from scratch, what is the very first thing you would have to decide? Before you build roads or write laws, you have to define the behavioral physics of the citizens who will live there. Conservatism functions like a broad gaming franchise. It contains several different expansion packs that use the same branding but run on completely different code. Inside this franchise, you have four main branches: traditional, one nation, neoconservative, and neoliberal. They all share the same political label, but they fiercely disagree on what the basic source code of society should actually look like. To figure out what a conservative actually believes, we need to examine how each branch programs the fundamental settings of human nature and community. Let's look at the first core simulator setting: human nature. The rules of your society depend entirely on whether you believe your citizens are born naturally flawed and need guidance, or if they are naturally highly capable. Meet Thomas Hobbes. He is essentially the lead developer for the traditional and neoconservative branches. Hobbes programmed his version of human nature with a very specific view. People are inherently selfish. They are morally imperfect and psychologically fragile. To Hobbes, a society filled with these selfish individuals would naturally spiral into a war of all against all. To prevent life from becoming nasty, brutish, and short, he argued you must build a government with absolute power to enforce order. On the opposite end of the spectrum is Ayn Rand, an intellectual architect for neoliberals. She wrote a completely different set of code. In her view, humans are incredibly rational and capable, and they find their greatest purpose in pursuing their own self-interest. This starting code dictates the size of your government. If you program humans as highly rational, you build a game with maximum freedom. But if you program them as inherently flawed, you build a game with a strict authority figure to keep the peace. Once you decide who your citizens are, you have to decide how they interact. This brings us to the multiplayer setting. How do individuals connect to form a community? Traditional thinkers set society to organic, a living organism where every class is physically connected. Successful nodes support vulnerable ones, keeping the organism alive. Conversely, neoliberals view society as atomistic. We are independent dots, owing each other nothing without voluntary exchange. These two views lead to entirely different policies. One side believes in a state-funded welfare net to preserve the organism. The other side believes in strict individual self-reliance. To see how these differences play out in the real world, we can stress test the simulation. We just need to introduce a massive, sudden emergency to the economy and society, something like the global COVID-19 pandemic. During the pandemic, One Nation and neoconservative leaders pragmatically pushed aside their usual free market rules. They supported massive government interventions, like the CARES Act or worker furlough schemes. They did this because their ultimate priority was survival. They stepped in immediately to actively protect the fragile social organism from experiencing a total and devastating systemic collapse, deciding that keeping the community alive was more important than pure capitalist theory. But the neoliberal branch, guided by Robert Nozick, heavily opposed this level of state interference. Nozick argued for a night watchman state, a government doing almost nothing except protecting property and contracts. From this viewpoint, taxing citizens to pay for massive bailouts is literal, legalized theft. Extreme stress forces a choice, revealing whether a politician's ultimate loyalty is to protecting the social community or protecting the free market. When you zoom out from these individual settings, you can see that modern conservatism is really a perpetual tug-of-war between two opposing core instincts. On one side, the traditional and one nation instinct pulls toward maintaining order, honoring tradition, and protecting the community organism. On the opposite side, the neoliberal instinct demands individual freedom, atomistic independence, and deregulated markets. That tension explains why conservative politics can look contradictory. It's why a politician might demand the government enforce moral behaviors on a Tuesday, and then demand the government be dismantled on a Wednesday. When you hear the word conservative on the news, try to identify which of these expansion packs is currently being used. This label covers a centuries-old debate about how to balance human flaws, societal health, and the ultimate price of freedom.